right, let us talk about our pockets, shall we, and how empty they're feeling at the moment. South Africans are about to be hit with more significant tariff increases. I promise you, whichever direction you look at, something's going up. So there's an increase in petrol that's happening at midnight, in which consumers, you should brace yourself to pay 16 Rand 13 per litre inland, and coastal provinces will pay around 15 Rand 49 cents a litre. So that's petrol. Now, last month, the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, or NERSA, announced an increase in tariffs, electricity tariffs, by 9.4% for the 2019-2020 financial year. That's way above inflation. Now, both of these commodities are a necessity to the majority of South Africans, and the combined effect is likely to snowball into other essential areas, such as food, schooling, transport, clothing, medication, and so on. Even small businesses and job creation will be affected. Let's chat to Isaah Mhlanga. He, of course, is the executive chief economist at Alexander Forbes. Good to have you. Thanks so much for coming in.
Good for having me.
I nearly called you the chief executive of Alexander Forbes.
I would love to one day.
It would be nice, hey?
I keep that job to David.
Okay, keep it at arm's length. I'm not exaggerating when I say that this is going to be a very, very tough time for South Africans. And we've been warned about this for a while, but we've seen so much going up now. I mean, talk to us about going forward. How are you seeing South Africans surviving all of this?
It is going to be tough, especially for what we call the financial well-being of the consumer. Let's just go through some numbers to just demonstrate how difficult it's going to be.
Yeah.
Petrol increases by 134 cents per month. It means that is about 240 rands more for an average car of 45-litre tank, which the consumer didn't budget for. You take electricity tariffs, they're going, if you take maybe a 2-bedroom house with 3 people in it per month, you're going to pay 70 Rand more in addition to what you used to pay previously. If you also take water tariffs, let's say, for instance, you consumed 300 Rand worth of water, previously it's going to increase by 30 Rand. Combined, all those, they take you to about 345 Rand, which the consumer didn't budget for. But if you consider that most parents, they stay way far from places of work, and sometimes it's not even on the route to where their kids go to school, it means they have to pay separately for transportation of kids to school, which means it's going to even increase beyond 345 Rand per month, which the consumer did not budget for. But if you look on an income side, the increase are not as high as the cost side.
And that's if an increase is happening, because if you speak to most people, it's a matter of, you know what, I'm just so grateful I have a job. I'm not worried about an increase at this stage. But you're saying that, but everything else around you is going up. So, I mean, are you noticing that salaries are not increasing even remotely at the inflation rate?
Yeah, absolutely, especially for those consumers that are not, or for those workers that are not protected by labor unions, which means they can't bargain at a labor as organized labor. It means they're not going to get as high increases in terms of their wages. But all the costs that continue to increase, if you also look in terms of job prospects, with the minimum wage kicking in at the beginning of this year, unlikely that employers are going to increase employment, which means job prospects have also just declined in terms of the likelihood of getting jobs. So that squeezes the consumer in an economy which has been struggling for a very long time.
So, I mean, I'm going to add a little bit more to what you spoke about, because you've touched on, which we're going to go into a little bit more detail, the electricity prices. Remember that sin taxes are also coming in. So what viewers know, but if you don't know, it's everything we heard in the budget starts coming into effect now. So these sin taxes, but that's if you want to enjoy that. Your beer is 12%, wine 22 cents, sparkling wine 84 cents from today, whiskey goes up 4.54 Rand, cigarettes go up 1.14 Rand. Then, of course, we've got the fuel. Remember, we've got the fuel price going up, but there's also the fuel levy that's been added into it. Yeah. So we add that in, which was, I think, 15 cents a litre. Sugar tax, remember the sugar taxes that we're paying, the VAT that we saw coming in last year, that 1 percentage point hike. And it's just everywhere you look, as we're saying, and you're saying that effect that it has a snowball effect on every single one of us. We're even going to be having a carbon tax coming in on the 5th of June. How are we, as the South African consumer, expected to carry this burden?
I think what we just spoke about is the burden directly to the consumer. We haven't spoken about the impact on small businesses, which are responsible for creating a number of jobs in the economy. We haven't spoken about the impact of electricity, the impact of water tariffs on these small businesses whose revenues continue to be hit because of load shedding. I was in Cape Town last week when load shedding was taking place, and the moment it took place, they just closed shops.
Yeah.
But because people they've pitched for work, it means you pay them full salary. Now, that is a cost base that has been crystallized, but your revenues have been hit hard because you had to close shop because of load shedding. Now, such is the impact of all the events that are taking place despite or outside of the increases in tariffs. Just because we don't have electricity is also a big knock to small businesses. Now, for the consumer, it's going to be tough going forward because these costs are unlikely to go down.
Yeah.
If we look particularly for what's causing the increase in petrol prices, the rand has been weaker, oil prices have increased. But because we pay in rand terms, it means the rand cost of petrol has increased, and it's likely to remain that way as we continue to have concerns of credit rating downgrades, concerns of Eskom, electricity load shedding. This is going to weigh on us. And also, in the run-up to elections, historically, you see the currency also weakening until after elections. So this is going to continue to weigh on the consumer. And it's not just the price of petrol. The price of all imported products which we import, clothing, small manufacturing, utilities such as electronics, they will continue to increase because the currency is weaker, and this is going to exert a burden on the consumer.
I wanted to spend a little bit more time talking about electricity because you talked to load shedding. Where are we with load shedding? So we had a reprieve last week. We haven't heard anything this week. The massive impact that has on the economy. Can you give us a bit of an understanding? When we go through the time of load shedding, how much is this economy actually losing?
Estimates vary out there, but what I've seen is about R1 billion a day, which is quite significant. But I think for the last round of load shedding, we just had an unfortunate coincidence of several factors. We lost power from the Cahora Bassa coming from Mozambique, but also we ran out of diesel, which means we couldn't run the diesel turbines to add onto our electricity grid. And at the same time, we also had unplanned outages of power plants which were not maintained properly. But fortunately, the Cahora Bassa have been restored, which means we're now getting feed from Mozambique. But we also have the diesel supplies that has been replenished, which means we can run the diesel turbines to add to the electricity. So that has provided some relief in terms of load shedding. Hence, this week we don't have.
Okay, so it's a bit more stable.
It's a bit more stable now, but we don't know if it's going to continue.
It can hit us from any angle.
And the diesel is quite expensive to run.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's very expensive to run, and we now are seeing the increase coming in. We're paying 9.4% more. This is added to the 4.4% already. So basically this year, as many of us know, we're paying almost 14% more for electricity that we're not even getting. And that, I think, that is the most difficult pill to swallow, is that if you're getting the electricity, you think, okay, well, we're getting it. But a lot of the time, and particularly when you get these small businesses that are paying all of these increases, but they're not getting it, and losing jobs, losing money, and closing down. And that's the big problem. And like we talk, this is way above the inflation rate.
Absolutely. But I think for the economy as a whole going forward, electricity supply is quite so important. We cannot move into this fourth industrial revolution that is spoken about without stable electricity. It's just not possible, which means the economy will continue to operate below capacity, which in a way prevents the creation of jobs, which we so need, especially for a country that has high inequality levels, which primarily is created because of lack of jobs for the majority.
So we politically are also in, I mean, we're in a tumultuous time. This is elections. It's 30-something days before South Africans go to the polls. And that's something we need to always keep in our mind. So, things are going to go up and down and up and down. And it is very, very difficult. So talk to us about the effect of politics on our economy as well.
I think from an economic point of view, politics does have an impact from a policy point of view, because for businesses outside or companies that are looking to invest, they look for what kind of policies are going to be enacted in a country to make sure that it's a business-friendly environment. They can invest long-term without any need to fear for security of their property rights. They can get the skills which they require in an economy for them to operate. They can get the electricity for them to operate. But given the problems that we have, I think it's quite important for many businesses to see the election gone and to also see what kind of policies are going to be enacted. And mind you, these policies are debated by different political parties, which means whichever political party wins, if it has a smaller majority, it means it's going to have to, to coerce or to persuade other political parties to agree to a particular policy stance, which is quite difficult. If you look at Nelson Mandela Bay, you look at Tshwane, you look at Joburg, how they have been, because of coalition politics, they have been quite difficult to implement some of the policies. Now, take that at a country level. It becomes even more difficult if we don't have an outright majority for any of the parties. Yeah,
and when we sort of take all of the economic, I suppose we can't really call it instability at this time, because we are a stable country when it comes to politics, but there's a lot of electioneering going, and then, up and down, and then you get Moody's ratings. I know you alluded to that a little bit earlier, but why did they decide not to give us a rating or to give a comment on Friday? What happened there?
I think normally when credit rating agencies don't have more information than they had at the previous rating, there's no need to update a rating. Or if they are waiting for crucial information which may impact on their rating review, they also don't issue a rating until they have that information. And in this case, my sense is they're waiting for a strategic review or whatever plan that is going to be implemented on Eskom, because it does have a potential to impact the fiscus quite significantly. And perhaps because it has not yet been completed, that piece of information is not available. Hence, they took a position to say we keep the credit rating unchanged, both in terms of the outlook and the rating itself, while we wait for more information that may impact on our decision, which means they may issue a rating review outside of the scheduled reviews that we know, which normally comes in March and in November. So perhaps in June they may come up with a rating review once they receive the new information.
And perhaps once the elections are done and stability returns. That new dawn that we kept on hearing about and that we've been promised, where is it? Is it hiding behind a cloud? Is it out there, or is it not? Have we been promised false things? Because it's so difficult to see a new dawn when, at the end of the day, we're just paying more and more and more just to breathe in this country.
I think it's unfolding. If we are to look at the past 12 months, honestly speaking, I think we have seen quite significant changes. Remember, one of the issues that we had was the deterioration in terms of our institutions. We have seen a gradual repair of those institutions. It is the institutions that make sure that they protect the country when people that are put in charge of those institutions maybe are not running them correctly. So to put the right structures in institutions is quite important. For instance, we just had a few months ago the appointment of the head of the national public prosecutions, which is quite important from a law enforcement point of view. We just also had the appointment of the head of SARS, which is quite an important institution, which, by the way, as of yesterday, they under-collected about 14 billion rands because in part of the deterioration of the institutional strength of SARS. So we have seen quite a lot over the past 12 months. But I think given the damage that was done to the economy, it is almost unrealistic to expect all this damage that was done over the past 10 years to be undone in 12 months. It's going to take some time. But we've seen some confidence returning in the local economy. We've seen private businesses also announcing investments in the country, which I would expect after elections, after we get some policy pronouncements that make sure that the business environment is much more certain, we're likely to see more investment coming into the country, even from offshore investors. So
finally, after we've spoken about everything, let's end this on a positive note, if we can. Is this a little bit of a blip on the radar, looking forward, looking into the future for South Africa? Are you confident? I mean, do you think that things are going to improve for South Africans? There will be more job prospects. There will be more growth in the economy, because at the moment it is very difficult to think that it is going to be a better place. But what are your views? What are you looking at?
I'm more positive. I have seen positive change over the past 12 months, and it gives me the confidence that we are going to be able to attract fixed investment, which is quite crucial for job creation. The private sector is coming on board. We have seen that trust deficit slowly narrowing between public sector and private sector. And because of that, I'm quite confident we're going to see more investment in the country, which is going to create jobs for people. And once people have jobs, a lot of the social issues are going to be reduced. But let's be realistic. It's not going to be done overnight. Yeah. It's going to take concerted effort from all social partners in the country, working together in one direction to take the economy out of the doldrums that it is in. But it's going to take some time.
Thank you for talking to us. Great to have you here in studio with us. Isaah Mhlanga, he is the Executive Chief Economist at Alexander Forbes, talking to us about the economy. Remember, there's been so many increases that have come in just this month, so it's a tough one for South Africans. But at the end of the day, as Isaah was saying, there is some light at the end of the tunnel, so don't be too pessimistic. All right, let's take a break here on the program. When we return, we'll bring you the news at 8, but also remind you of our question of the day, and that is, are attacks on foreign nationals xenophobia or just criminality? We'll read some of your responses as well. Do stay tuned.